Hello, everybody. Welcome, Vegas Cannabis Summit. How's everybody doing out there? Feeling alive and well? Thanks for being here at 11 to celebrate the first panel of our events for the next 2 days. We've got an awesome lineup here. I'm excited to present the legal and compliance panel here for Vegas Cannabis Summit 2018. And I'll introduce you to our lovely moderator, Aisha Goins. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you guys for being here. It's not too early, right? No? You got to talk back. It's not too early, right? All right. How you feeling? You feeling okay? Great. So I'm going to introduce the panel. I am excited to be here. I always feel humbled when I'm invited to places, and to be on a panel with these distinguished people just makes me feel, I don't know, kind of small. To my right is Mr. Rutledge. If you would introduce yourself, please, and then going down the line.
So, Scott Rutledge. I'm a partner at Argentum Partners. We do government affairs, regulatory work here in Nevada. In 2016, I managed the legalization campaign and worked closely with Senator Segerblom and the industry to pass that initiative. I've been in Nevada since 2004. I actually moved here to work on a legalization campaign. We were a little early on that one, and spent most of my career here working on campaigns and doing government affairs and regulatory affairs work. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. My name is Melissa Romero. I work for Altitude Products. We work for designing packaging for cannabis products and cannabis brands. I started in marketing for cannabis, which is really kind of what led me to where I am now. A couple of the brands that we work with that you might be familiar with are Caviar Gold and the Weekend Box, and there will be plenty more to come following very shortly.
Thank you, Melissa. My name is Brandon Dorsky. I'm an attorney licensed to practice in California. I've been working in legal cannabis since 2009. I'm of counsel at Frontier Law Group and specialize in intellectual property issues in the growing cannabis market.
I'm Tim Segerblom. I'm a state senator. I was active in getting our medical marijuana bill and then our recreational bill passed both by the legislature and by the voters, and have helped tweak it a bit. So we're very proud of Nevada's marijuana laws, and hopefully we're going to be looked upon as one of the models for the country.
And I'm Aisha Goins. I am a blogger, cannabis blogger. I have Blackabis is one of my blogs, also Exchange the High. I am a columnist for Elevate Magazine and assistant manager for a dispensary here in the city. And I appreciate being here, and I'm your moderator today. So we're into our, I'm gonna start with California and then go into Nevada if that's okay. So California just went rec. Can you tell us what that is looking like as far as regulations go and getting everybody acclimated to how things are moving?
Slow, definitely slow. They were very excited for rec, but I know that there's a lot of different licenses they have to be awarded. They need state, city, county, all that good stuff. So a lot of people are working on getting all of their licenses so that they're able to operate and be compliant at the same time. We'll definitely get there. A lot of companies out in California are making it their priority to operate compliantly. So I think we'll definitely get there, but it's a slow start. But you know what they say, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, the California marketplace is really interesting. We voted it in, but the legal paradigm, I'd say, it's not in flux, but there are benchmark dates. You could get a temporary permit, and that'll only last till April, and then you need your actual, your permanent license. There's a window of time until, I believe, July 1st, where people can exchange product between different companies, and then after July 1st, A licensees can only distribute to A licensees, M licensees can only distribute to M licensees. Then come the beginning of 2019, people who are operating in the medical paradigm, if they haven't gotten new licenses and permits, they can no longer be selling product or accepting product through the old MRSA rules. So there are these benchmark dates where there'll be shocks to the market and you'll see people enter or fall out. Whereas currently, even though you have adult use cannabis, there's still a very active medical market in California.
And I know I'm, for one, is interested to see how that's going to compare to the way Nevada rolled out. We're in our third quarter now. Can you guys kind of explain what that looks like as far as the market is a whole? Scott?
Yeah, I'll try to speak to it. So I think we right now are, and Senator Segerblom could probably speak to this a little more detail, but we're outpacing projections on revenue. There was a little bit of a speed bump early on with the distribution issue, which was sort of in the news for a couple months. But that's been worked through. You know, as someone who works with clients, dealing with the regulators and enforcement, you know, there have been challenges with packaging and advertising requirements, things like that. But I'll tell you, you know, we're still being held up as a model for how to do this. And so even with those headaches that come with being compliant, I think it's demonstrating how to regulate cannabis really well from the start. And again, I would pass this on to Senator Segerblom, who can speak in far more.
I just add that we are very lucky in that we didn't have an existing medical program like California does. So we didn't have to take an unregulated market and put it into a regulation. So we start out with regulated medical, and so it's easy just to flip a switch to go to recreational. But I don't envy what you guys have to go through, but I guess it's good for lawyers, right?
Right, it is good for lawyers.
On that, I will say, some of you may have noticed that in Oregon, their U.S. attorney called a meeting, it was about a week and a half ago, and Nevada's new U.S. attorney and several others attended, law enforcement in the state of Oregon, along with the regulators. And the issues that they're running into in Oregon, it speaks to what Senator Segerblom was saying about having a very, they had a big medical market prior to that maybe wasn't the best regulated. And so their transition into adult use has been challenging. We did go to Oregon. I was on a trip with Senator Segerblom and other legislators prior to us launching the Quick Start program here. And I think we learned some things from them, but really the thing that I think we're fortunate in Nevada is that we did not have a robust medical market prior to rolling out our recreational law. So that's actually helping us. In Oregon, they've got a lot of challenges they've got to work through. In California as well. Colorado still is dealing with some of those concerns. I think Nevada really has shown how to go from medical to rec the right way.
Do you see, as the industry evolves just nationwide, do you see medical still being a staple for how to build the business correctly or firmly or as that foundation?
Let me go ahead and answer that. This is start. I do. I think the simplest thing for a state that doesn't have a program is to start with medical, get it out there, get the grows, get the testing labs all set up, and then when you go to rec, you're able to just move forward. But otherwise, you're going to be behind the curve because the dispensaries are easy to build, the grows are tough to build, and they take a long time to you know, once the plant is there to get going. So you're always going to be short of supply. So if you can get a medical program out early, learn how to regulate it, then when you go to rec, it's just a matter of just building that bigger. And in fact, you don't have to have two separate inventories, two separate anything. You can just have the same product, just call it medical or call it recreational. But I think that's looking at a state that hasn't done it, that's the way to go.
Do you believe that that's one of the issues just moving forward in the nation is that, because you see more states are going rec, like recreational is kind of becoming the norm almost, which is exciting. But do you think that's going to be a stability issue just in the foundation of the industry, not being able to platform on medical or in just going rec, like coming out the gate going rec, as in New Jersey? New Jersey they have recreational laws.
Well, but they have a medical program. So to his credit, the governor that was just elected, his first thing he did was said, let's expand the medical program. So they're reaching out to make that much larger, much more robust, so then they'll have something to build on. But it makes it so much simpler because medical, the problem with medical is it's tough to make a living. So these companies that are in there are hanging on by their fingernails, and at some point they need to go rec. But if they can survive, that's a great platform to build on.
I think it's actually great for the state to start with med and then go to rec. However, if you're trying to build a business, I would not recommend starting with med. I would definitely recommend waiting and doing rec. But I think it's definitely great for the state to have that kind of baseline with the med market before rolling out into a rec market. Absolutely.
One thing I would add to that, so Michigan is looking at doing a legalization campaign this year. They are waiting to get the ballot signatures qualified by the state. Michigan has had a robust program for 10 years, but the way it was designed and developed has led to a lot of problems. For example, they never licensed dispensaries in the state of Michigan. So while you could cultivate as a caregiver, et cetera, there were no dispensary options. And local governments took it upon themselves to allow that. And so now they've had to redo their medical regulations and then rescind some of those old laws. And so there's some growing pains there. So I think doing medical right from the beginning will definitely benefit a rec program, but doing medical wrong from the beginning can make it that much more difficult to transition.
The state of Nevada has, we have very, I want to say concise, I'll use that word. We have concise regulatory programs in place to ensure that we're putting out good medicine. Do you see the rest of the nation duplicating those regulatory scenarios?
I'm going to say yes. I think that what we're doing is working really well. Obviously, there are going to be some growing pains, and we're all learning and growing together. But I think that everyone's kind of watching what we're doing, and they're going to look at what we did right, maybe what we did wrong, what didn't work so well, and then they're going to use that as a template for the other states as they roll out.
And to that end, last week we had 2 days, actually 2 days with New Jersey legislators and lobbyists came out, and we had a seminar one day, and then we had a tour the next day so they could see our program. And they were very impressed with what we're doing, and I think we'll see more of that. We said if you don't have a medical program already, we're the perfect example of how to start with medical, grow it, and then move on to recreational, and without a hiccup. Because we actually opened up 6 months early here from rec, whereas other states like Massachusetts that had a medical program are still trying to get their recreational program out.
Federal laws criminalize the sale and distribution of cannabis, and it creates obstacles for companies in the industry to expand from state to state. What do you believe the resolve of this issue will be, and how will that affect the economy as a whole?
Well, hopefully the result to that issue is the federal legalization of cannabis, but I think we're quite a ways away from that. And in terms of your ability to grow and how it could help the economy, certainly the banking issue is critical there, because the movement of money and capitalization is an ongoing problem in the industry, and moving money that is derived from cannabis businesses across state lines definitely implicates certain federal laws, and that frustrates how companies can grow. I mean, there are several companies in the industry that have presence in multiple states, but the way they have that presence, when you lift up the hood, it doesn't look like, what PepsiCo looks like in terms of how they have distribution in multiple states. It's different, it's nuanced, and it certainly requires lots of legal work.
In my conversations with individuals who are working with federal lobbyists to change those federal laws, the banking and the 280E issue are really important, as well as just recognizing states' rights. Some of you are familiar with the Warbacher-Blumenauer Amendment, and there are others like that even extend to cover recreational. Those appropriations and some of those amendments are probably the way we're going to patchwork our way for the next few years. I don't think a wholesale change in the administration is going to lead to this. I think what will help is this: states that are looking at beginning these programs, whether it be New Jersey finally getting it right, or Tennessee, where I've been working on a medical cannabis bill there. I mean, if you start counting the members of the House and then looking at those senators, they don't have cannabis as a constituency today. But when these businesses open in their states, I think we'll see them come around to say, well, look, even though we have issues with the fact that it's federally illegal and maybe it's not FDA approved, these businesses, these patients, these doctors are my constituents, and so we should do everything we can to protect them. And then I think somewhere in 7 to 9 years, we may see the end of federal prohibition. As far as from a business perspective, while it certainly presents challenges because you can't be PepsiCo, I would argue that this patchwork basis right now works well for the smaller business, because once federal prohibition ends, then I think we'll start to see the idea of big marijuana really take hold. So for the next several years, if you're a smaller business, this is your chance to expand into new markets. It certainly is more challenging and more risk, but I think it's a better opportunity for business.
That's a great perspective.
I was going to add to that. I agree that the reality is having it illegal at some level at the federal level is very important for the industry to develop, because otherwise big pharma, big tobacco, big alcohol is going to come in and just swoop it up and take it over. Whereas this right now allows us to develop our little industry, create some entrepreneurs, create some business people, create some lawyers, and then once it finally goes legal, they can capitalize on it too. And hopefully, the main thing we're missing now is having the minority community involved too. So if we can reach out and bring women and minorities into it, then we have a chance to really bring a whole new group of entrepreneurs and business people into the society and use this as an advantage to promote people that have been displaced historically.
I'm glad that you pointed that out. I love this industry. I've fallen in love with this industry, and one of the things that I do love is the diversity that you see trying to get in the industry, because oftentimes people are just pushed back from certain industries because of maybe education or information, and this is an industry that people are just hungry to know more about, and it's great to have the opportunity presented where small businesses can still make a name for themselves as it being from state to state, because there isn't an opportunity for big business to take over per se. So I appreciate, and I'm glad you pointed that out, Scott. Because cannabis is federally illegal, there offers challenges to trademarking or patenting products. Can you talk to the value of intellectual property?
I'll take this one. Well, yeah, so there are challenges at the trademark level, extreme challenges at the trademark level, because the USPTO doesn't consider any cannabis good a good that's lawful in commerce. On the patent side, that's where you can actually create some great intellectual property rights, because a patent will gives you the right to practice something or not practice it. And because the right you're acquiring allows you to not practice something or prohibit other people from practicing the thing you patented, the federal government allows you to patent things related to cannabis. So cannabis extraction methodology, new molecules, new derivations, those things can be patented. On the trademark side, certain states run afoul of the United States patent and trademark rules and have opened up cannabis trademarks for in-state, but you still can't get it at the federal level. And if you have a state law trademark and then perhaps try to get a trademark in a different class of goods that's the same as your cannabis mark, the USPTO is likely to deny that application. Over time, and I'd say somewhere in the last 12 to 24 months, the USPTO appointed several, I guess you call them prosecutors or attorneys that review, and they got a bit more aggressive in denying cannabis, or applications for companies that play in the cannabis space but maybe don't make flower or a concentrate product. And so I'd say now there's a bit more of a dance if you're trying to build a intellectual property portfolio that includes trademarks at the federal level. You can get trademarks if you have goods that are lawful in commerce, but to the extent that you're putting out goods that are lawful in commerce at the federal level, but they're only being consumed or used in the cannabis marketplace, we've now seen the USPTO deny those trademarks. So if you make a machine that only, I guess, you know, its sole purpose is to remove flowers from the stalks, And so you could get a patent on the processes in that machine, but let's say you wanted to trademark the name brand of that product and class of goods for whatever type of machinery it is. We've seen the USPTO deny those applications, even though the good is a legal good. It's just the only people who are using it to create goods that are not lawful.
So how does a consumer go about, I know that you're in legal areas, but how does a business owner go about putting in intellectual properties that have value, that will have value financially later? How do they secure that?
I would say, I certainly advise clients that copyrights are a great way to go. Copyright is automatic, but to get maximum legal rights, you have to register your copyright. But if you create a design or logo for your brand, and it's unique enough or original enough to rise to the level of being copyrightable, that's something that you can license freely. And in a marketplace where cannabis goods were considered lawful, you could then also trademark your copyrighted logo. But at the very least, if you've registered your copyright, you own intellectual property that you can license and you can police. So you have some OG Kush logo and you start selling OG Kush products or licensing OG Kush products in multiple states. If you didn't register your copyright, you certainly would have a lower ceiling on potential damages than if you had.
Didn't we see some issues with some companies using brand recognition from other industries and having to pay out or cease and desist?
Yes, that's a good thing to bring up. In November, Gorilla Glue, I believe it ended up being a settlement, but they got a lot of money from a particular company that was growing cannabis that they called Gorilla Glue. For those in the audience that don't know, Gorilla Glue is a famous tape that is branded all across the country, and they have a trademark. And they argued that the use of the name Gorilla Glue on cannabis tarnished their trademark, and they were successful in making that argument. And that has now, I'd say, that has emboldened trademark owners who have trademarks for non-cannabis goods, and their names may have been used to describe cannabis. So if you are a dispensary owner out there selling Gorilla Glue, I would strongly advise that you change the name of that flower on your whatever menu. Call it GG number 4 or something not Gorilla Glue, because you're exposing yourself to potential liability. And I think we will see that more and more. There's a strain, Skittles, it's Skittles, but it's with Z's on both ends. I would not be surprised if Mars starts sending out cease and desist letters to anybody that is selling or growing Skittles.
There was also a strain called Girl Scout cookies that has recently been essentially renamed to GSC. It's my understanding that Girl Scouts of America didn't go after them, but they essentially asked them, could you please not? So just, something that everyone is starting to kind of notice what brand names or strain names or whatever we're using. So if you are looking to come up with a new product or something, maybe just make your name extra unique.
So essentially, the best way to do is to just trademark or copyright logos, names, and things like that without it being connected to cannabis. Is that going to be the best way for cannabis businesses to secure their assets, per se?
I think for any business, cannabis or not, it's a wise strategic move to build a strong IP portfolio. So I would encourage any business owner to do that. And certainly a cannabis business owner, there might be, a slightly different dance for how you would acquire those rights. So if you knew you were going to come to or you were planning on coming to market with a product that might have, any name, Microphone Dank, right? And you thought you might put that on the market. What you could do is start putting out T-shirts that said Microphone Dank, and start selling cups that say Microphone Dank, and have a website, Microphone Dank, that only sells those things. And you could get trademarks in those things. If you then later on created a strain of weed called Microphone Dank, that company could potentially license the use of that name, or maybe they accept a fee in exchange for agreeing not to sue you for tarnishing their trademark.
Wow.
And that would actually be a sophisticated way to address the intellectual property problem.
Wow.
So Segerblom Haze is not trademarked, is that correct?
Not yet, but it sounds like I better do it quick.
Hint, hint. As we are in Nevada, we're in our third quarter. We're moving into our third quarter of being rec. Can you guys talk about, have we exceeded your projections, or are we right in line? Or where do you see the market moving forward to?
Right now, our numbers are higher than what was originally projected. We have a projection for the first 2 years, the state did, and we're considerably above that. We're still a little too early to tell if we're still on the upwards trajectory or we're stable, but we should be going up for at least another 6 months or so. Just a question of how high we go. We haven't really tapped into the 40 million tourists that come here, and that was the original thought, was that would be a great bonanza. But the reality is, until we have pot lounges and some other public types of uses, I think it's going to be tough to get into the tourism, because they need to have some place to go and go to places where they know they can buy it and use it. And so far we haven't been able to get there. But that to me is the next frontier.
Just to follow up on what the senator was saying, hopefully we'll have an ordinance in the city of Las Vegas on social use venues. That's what the ordinance will be called, sometime this summer. And we'll see the first lounges and other types of venues open in the third and fourth quarter of this year. And the Nevada Dispensary Association did some polling research that said that only 32% of tourists coming to Nevada were aware they could purchase adult use marijuana. So I think there needs to be a broader effort in promoting and advertising this industry to tourists, obviously within the regulations and the law, but I think we could do a better job of that. Senator's 100% correct, though. When we open up those lounges, these venues, I think it is going to drive more tourism and higher sales for these dispensaries. Plus, a couple other things. We haven't opened up all the businesses. I mean, there are cultivations and productions still coming online. There are dispensaries that still haven't gotten their rec license. And we're adding home delivery in this next round of regulations. So we're exceeding the numbers now. Give this 6 more months. I mean, I think it's gonna be even larger increase in revenues. And the other thing that comes with home delivery and consumption venues is this. It's the normalization of cannabis. When people who don't want to go to a dispensary but would like to purchase it and can now have it delivered to them at the privacy of their home, or somebody wants to go to it, we can show at these venues that people that look just like this audience from all walks of life can come together and share a joint the same way that they have drinks at a bar. These are the things that are going to start to change mindset even more so. So I'm really looking forward to this next 12 months of what we do here in Nevada, because I think we will lead in that normalization effort. As much as I love Colorado and all my friends in Colorado, and they have led the way, I think we have an opportunity for no other reason than those 42 million tourists coming here a year, being able to show the world what cannabis is about.
So what do you think, what do you project the compliance to look like for the cannabis lounges and the home delivery? And I'm only asking because I know that there are people who are always looking for opportunities to get into business, and I would be remiss not to open the dialogue to get those juices flowing for these people. So can you kind of speak to what we may look like in that regulatory area?
Absolutely. So under delivery, it'll be the ability for you to say, open up a business, have delivery drivers who have an agent card with a dispensary, not every dispensary, but a dispensary agent card sponsored by a dispensary partner. Now you can go out and start a small business that's going to provide delivery services, because maybe that dispensary doesn't want to do that. There will be costs involved with the secure transport, et cetera. And so that's an opportunity for ancillary services. Now the lounges, having been working on this ordinance for a year and talking to a lot of people who are interested, and having friends who work in nightlife here, there are a lot of folks who want to leave nightlife because they're tired of doing that thing and come work at a consumption venue because it's just going to be a better experience in their mind. There's not going to be at the city a cap on the number of these, but there will be a high barrier to entry. And that doesn't necessarily mean financial. It just means you're going to have to pass those background checks. You're going to have to get the zoning approvals for the location. There's a lot that's going to go into it, but it will not be the same type of requirements as, say, getting a dispensary permit. So that should also open up some opportunity for people who couldn't get into the licensed side of this business, right? These will be privileged licenses, by the way, but it'll be a different type of license. And it's not regulated by the state at this point, but it could be in the future, and that could change some of this. But I feel like the city's going to go first, then Clark County will follow, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity to come in, either owning one of these, or working as a management person, or even just coming in and working as an employee because you're tired of working that other job. So I do think that these new ancillary opportunities in cannabis in Nevada are going to create a lot more jobs and opportunity for people who couldn't get into the business otherwise.
So one of the obstacles that I see in the state of Nevada and also in California is education in this industry. Do you guys foresee that there'll be some regulatory legislature put out that will require some kind of certificates or some kind of education getting into this industry moving forward?
Well, we actually passed an apprenticeship program modeled after labor unions, and it was tied with the UFCW, but the governor vetoed that. But I think going forward, that's what you're going to see is much more training. All the dispensaries right now, you'll train their people, but it'd be nice to have standardized training, standardized ideas of how it all works, and then have people that are certified who you can just call up into a hiring hall and say, come on out, you know what they're going to get. You can teach them your little specifics about your industry, but there's going to be people who are very skilled who can go from place to place and market their skills once we get that out. But it's going to take a while, but it's inevitable.
I'll plug the Dispensary Association since I'm not represented today. They are starting a training program this month, and it won't just be for people who are currently employed with agent cards in the industry, but those who are looking to get into the industry. And if you go, just Google Nevada Dispensary Association, they'll have this information on their website. They've developed curriculum for learning how to work in a cultivation, how to work in an edibles and infused facility, how to work in a dispensary. And then we are actually hoping that through this same training program that we're going to have a Consume Smart program for those who are going to work in these consumption venues. Colorado's actually doing this right now. I think the organization is called SCORE. Don't quote me on that, but maybe Google Denver Consumption Venue Employee Training. So there's going to be more and more training, and that's key to this industry's success and being compliant is having well-educated and well-trained employees. And if the state's not requiring it yet, the fact that these other opportunities exist, I think that bodes well for our industry to continue to. We call ourselves the gold standard in that education and training and being compliant. That's why states like New Jersey are coming here to look at how we do this.
I think education is really important across the board. It's actually one of the things that we made sure to include in our product, the Weekend Box, shameless plug. We have a consumption guide that's included in every single one so that anyone who is trying cannabis for the first time can know what to expect, can know what to take, can know what's going to happen, can know where it's legal to consume and where it's not. And then one of the things that we actually do on the retail side of things is when we sell our products, we actually send out one of our representatives to train the bud tenders on our product as well so that they're able to sell it properly to the customers that come in so that customers aren't getting misconstrued information, they're not getting things that are wrong. You know, we want to make sure that they have the right information so that they can have a good experience because at the end of the day, a positive experience is what's going to get these people coming back for more and is what is going to ultimately lead to the normalization of cannabis.
One more plug too. So make me think of this. So Social Media Unicorn has worked with Las Vegas Medical Marijuana Association. We need bi-monthly education meetings with different guest speakers. And so that's not just for industry people, but anybody who's curious about learning about this industry. And you know, there's the Bud Tender Fight Club that Jason Sturtzman's been doing. I think the more education that's done for not only people that work in this industry, but available to whether it be regulators, policymakers, or just people that are curious about this industry, we do have a lot of those opportunities that are available.
As we move forward, has the lawmakers considered the idea of rehabilitation for those who were incarcerated for marijuana use or marijuana felons?
I can speak to, in California, some of the cities or municipalities actually favor citizens that have been arrested and convicted of cannabis crimes. I know in Oakland, that actually gives you elevated priority status for getting a license. So they have, it's considered I believe it's known as a social equity program. And different cities have different rules to qualify, but in some places in California, it's essentially better for you if you had been arrested and convicted in that county for a cannabis crime.
So do you think that's going to become a standard for scoring, like there will be points awarded or some kind of set aside for disenfranchised minorities to get into the industry?
I would hope so. I think it's a great thing to include in the law, because if you have been convicted of a felony, you have had more than likely historical problems gaining employment. Almost any employment application asks you if you've been convicted of a felony. So to open the window for that to no longer be a knock against you when you're trying to be employed, but actually be an advantage in getting ownership or stake of ownership in a cannabis business in a large, very growing and emerging market, I think is a great thing. I think any state that is considering that as part of their regulatory program also has to consider other laws that might invalidate that. So, you can't have laws that are racially discriminatory, so you need to draft that legislation so it would pass muster and not be challenged as a law that is unenforceable for some other reason. I think what Oakland's done is great. I'm based in Los Angeles. Los Angeles does not have the same rules that favor people who were convicted of cannabis crimes, but they do have a social equity program that favors the socioeconomically disadvantaged. And I think that's a great thing, because it's a tremendous opportunity to get involved in this business right now.
Can I follow up on that? The reality is the war on drugs was really a war on peoples of color, and they have really been adversely impacted, and there are thousands out there that have something on their record, so we have to figure out a way to get that off their record too. Even though they want on their record to get a marijuana license, they want to get it off the record to get other kinds of jobs. So in Nevada, we're working on individuals, find out a process where they can come forward, and with the Dispensary Association, we'll provide legal resources for them free to help them do that. But in California, district attorneys are actually just going through and wiping them off on their own,
yes.
Which we need to do that here in Nevada in the next legislative session, because it is incredibly difficult to get something off your record, and a lot of people don't even realize the process. So if the government can actually do it themselves, which they should, why should anything be on your record that is currently legal? That is absolutely crazy. And again, it impacts the poorest and the people of color more.
Yeah, in California, it's full dismissal. It's not even expungement. It's as if it never happened.
And that's exciting. Just, I'm looking forward to Nevada pushing that. I know you guys are on the cutting edge, so I'm not even concerned. But it's very enlightening when I read that California was doing that, how progressive of them to actually just go through and do that. As a matter of fact, I'm really, congratulations to California. That is just phenomenal. Do you foresee, so I have personal questions, and I know that the audience has questions, so if it's okay, I want to make sure it's okay in the last 15 minutes if we can take audience questions. Are you guys okay with that? All right. So I have a question regarding how we're moving forward just as an industry in the United States. Will they reschedule? Do you believe that that is a possibility?
I think they will at some point. I think they'll actually deschedule. I think, again, it comes down to states. continuing to move forward and lead the way. And the more states that do this, again, that means more members of Congress and these senators, their constituency for cannabis starts to grow, and they'll start to push back. It's really just a numbers game, and it's also a demographics game. If you look at polling nationally for support for legalization, 10 years ago it was more opposition than support, and now we're in like the mid to high 50s, in some cases low 60s, and that number is just going to continue to grow. Cannabis is not a partisan issue, even though that's the perception. But if you look at those partisans in Congress, look at their age first, right? The older members of Congress that are more conservative, and even some of the Democratic members, it's an age thing, mostly. So I think that's the demographic shifting, more states passing these state laws, and again, just showing those polling numbers continue to rise means that eventually we're going to get to a point where they're going to have to change these laws.
Let me just follow up with that. I really feel it's like gay marriage. It's just one of those things that's just going to flip. It may not flip in 2018, but it'll definitely flip in 2020. And the other thing that's happened is when Sessions came out last month and said he was going to get rid of the Cole memo, that forced a lot of politicians who were on the edge or were kind of hiding to come out of the woodwork and say, yes, we support the industry. So it's really important for the industry to be talking to their congressional representatives and point out that in Nevada we have 6,000 jobs, $300 million invested, $300 million in taxes. I mean, we cannot put this genie back in the bottle. We live on it. And we need to get our politicians to step up and say, it's a states' rights issue, we need to protect these people. And that happens more and more every day. And I said, once it flips, it's going to just, you're going to be like, why did it take so long? But it's going to flip real quick here.
Can you talk to the lawsuit that is being given to Jeff Sessions? I'm not really clear on what exactly is happening. Can either one of you speak to that?
On which thing? On what Sessions did?
No, there's a lawsuit right now that's being filed.
Well, there's a couple of lawsuits out there that are just challenging being scheduled at 1, because the reality is there's no evidence to show that there is evidence to show it does have medicinal purposes, and it's being scheduled 1. It has to show the point of being scheduled 1 is there is no medicinal purpose for the drug. Okay. And so there's no justification for that, and so they're suing him saying, how can you have to reschedule? But that's the one I'm thinking about.
Okay. So, did you guys have any questions? Any questions out there? All right. Sir?
I think eventually it'll get back to where it was, but the reality is to get to where we are, we had to make a deal with the police, and the police are totally freaked out about home grows. So we basically had to throw the home grows under the bus to get the cops on board with recreational and get the program out as early as they can. But it can't be too long before it'll be just like making beer at your house. I mean, the reality is most people realize that it's much more innocuous than alcohol, cigarettes, Oxycontin, or any other drug. Then it's like, why can't you grow 2 plants? Who cares?
Yes, sir.
The taxes? Yeah. Again, that's right now, when you go to the dispensary and buy something in Nevada, about 30 cents of the dollar is taxes. That's way over what anybody else pays, which is crazy. But again, that's the deal we had to make with the devil to get it out there. So eventually, and hopefully it won't take too long, people start to look at that 30 cents and say, wait a minute, why are marijuana people paying more than alcohol people? The question is, well, we raised alcohol to 30 cents, 30%, or we reduced marijuana. Ideally, we could do both because alcohol is totally undertaxed. And the social costs for alcohol are outrageous. And we pay a fortune. We subsidize the alcohol industry by all the the illness and death that they cause. And so if we could raise their taxes to pay for some of that, we could hopefully reduce the marijuana taxes so it would be more an even playing field.
Just to follow up on that, I want to say it's also about how those revenues are spent, right? If we're taxing marijuana to hire more police officers, we're not doing it right, okay? The whole point of legalization was to reduce the impact on law enforcement. If these dollars are just going to the state and can go to any county, any jurisdiction, even those that say we don't want marijuana, we're not doing it right, right? So we need to think about how those revenues are spent. And if you look at a state like Colorado, and specifically in some of the metropolitan areas, they are spending money addressing issues of like homelessness and drug addiction and youth prevention and things like that, because that's where the industry wants these dollars to go. All the reasons why people said you can't support legalization, we should be using those dollars to show, no, not only do we not cause those problems, but we'll help fix them. So.
Any other questions in the audience? I can.
Is any of the tax money going to Clark County? I know that people have been mentioning that it's supposed to go to schools, but it doesn't appear to be. What's your opinion?
I wasn't quite clear what you said. Was any of the tax money going to Clark County? Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, it's an indirect way because it goes to the state and then they send it back. But unfortunately, a big chunk of it is going back into what's called the rainy day fund, which is not going anywhere. It's just being basically banked. But at the end of the day, of the 30 cents, 15% of that is going to schools, goes to the state, then comes back. The problem is some of the counties get to share that. They don't even have marijuana, so that's crazy. And then there's an 8% sales tax, which again, that's shared by the state and by the local governments. The 10% excise tax is what is now going to the rainy day fund. And we need to get that money out of the rainy day fund and back to local schools here in Clark County. And that's the next push. If we can't do it this year, we're going to do it next session.
You guys talk about legalization and for medical and doing well for everybody out there. But when you go out there for your medical and you're doing it to help yourself, but jobs and employers can just kick you right out, and they're just telling you not to do it. And it's legalization. It's supposed to be good for you. What are you going to do for jobs? I mean, when you are doing that, and you're scared to death that your job is going to throw you right out the door when you're trying to do it for your health and your benefit.
I think that's a very big macro question, and the
Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah. I think probably, I'm not going to speak for everybody up here on the panel, but I think the normalization of cannabis will help that issue. With employers, it's certainly, I know for a fact, it's an insurance issue. So, or that is one of the factors that plays into it. Insurance policies, it could invalidate your coverage if you have drug use. So many companies that have a large insurance policy that covers many employees, that is a categorical part of the employment that you do not consume drugs. And because of how cannabis stays in your system, if you consume cannabis when you're on the job, technically you would have cannabis in your system. And speaking to the business of insurance, once you have an insurance policy, insurance is in the business of figuring out how they don't have to provide you coverage. So that might, an employee could suffer for that reason. I wish I could give you a great answer, but I unfortunately, there's not a protected right to consume marijuana.
Well, I'll just say this, in Nevada, if you have a medical card, there is a protected right. And judges are saying you can't fire somebody just because they test positive if they have a medical card. Now, recreational, we haven't got to that point yet, but it is a legal drug, and so there's no reason, unless they can show that you're under the influence, there's no reason they should be able to even ask you whether you're using it or whether you're being, whether it's a problem. So any random testing, anything like that should be discouraged, and within the next couple of years will be not permitted. The other thing about it, the great thing is, the workforce is changing so much that so many people would test positive on a random basis, the employers can't afford to fire them.
Right.
Because the reality is all of you guys and your contemporaries, most of you, or at least a lot of you, smoke pot. You're not under the influence, but it's going to be in your system. And if they can't afford to throw you all out, they wouldn't have anybody to work for them.
I think it's also important that I like to use this term, voting has consequences. So it's important to get behind your politics, your politicians, get on the phone, make sure that you're having the right conversations, you're voting the right people in, because descheduling is the way to go. And if we hold our politicians accountable, then we have more a voice to get the things done that have value to us. So voting has consequences, and one of the consequences is making sure that your needs are being met.
No, there's a lot of people who have health insurance where that's a lot of people that use medical cannabis or even recreational cannabis. It doesn't impact their insurance policy or their employer's insurance policy. But again, what I would say is consult a lawyer or your employer. I don't think anybody on this panel could answer these very specific questions. Do we have any bigger, broader questions for the panel? Or?
Yeah, maybe one more before we can leave some closing thoughts from the panelists.
Hey guys, on the topic of consumption lounges, there was a hearing at the end of last year, and I just wondered if anybody on the panel knows when the next one is.
You say it again. I couldn't hear you. Could you hold the mic closer?
On consumption lounges, I know there was a hearing at the end of last year, and I wondered if anybody knows when the next one is.
Yes, I just met with the City of Las Vegas staff and one of the city attorneys. There is still some conversation going on with members of council about the draft ordinance language. Have not announced the first public meeting for this year, but it'll be sometime, I believe, next month. I'm sure there will be some news reporting about it now that the cat's out of the bag, that this is moving forward. It'll go before Planning Commission and then City Council. They'll do what's called a recommending committee, and 3 members of the council will sponsor that legislation essentially, and they'll work through that, and there'll be public hearings and a chance for the public to give their input. I anticipate we'll have an ordinance completed and applications available, I'm hoping before the end of the second quarter, so May or June.
Do you guys have any closing remarks?
Closing remarks? Just thank you all for coming, and the great thing about this industry is that it is like a rocket. Wherever you think it's going to be, it's going to be twice as far tomorrow. There's no stopping it so far. It's taking off. Everything has been very positive. So just hang in there. If you're trying to make some money, it's going to happen. But like all of us, we've been through the hard times, so now it's a matter of just trying to figure out where we're going to fit and go forward. But it's been a very positive experience for me, and I hopefully for everybody else.
Thank you all for coming, and I wish everyone the best of luck if they're trying to get involved in the business, and encourage anybody to contact your federal representatives and encourage them to promote the full legalization of cannabis.
Just want to say thanks for coming, and thank you for supporting our cannabis community in whatever way that you do. It helps, and we are who we are because of all of you, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming, and I can tell you it's been a great honor to work on behalf of this movement. I think we still have a long way to go, but getting to work with people like Senator Segerblom and a lot of the really courageous elected officials who've stood up for this plant and helped us get to where we are today, that we really owe them a debt of gratitude. And like the Senator said, sometimes we have to be patient about the way things are. We almost have to over-regulate so that we can prove that this is not uranium or something that's going to cause great harm, and then when everybody can chill out, right? And then we'll start to see that not necessarily more lax regulations, but there are certain things that I think we'll be able to move past. And on that last point, people ask, like, well, what's the most important thing about getting into cannabis? And I say it's real estate and compliance. So, start there when you start to think about whether or not you want to apply for one of these businesses, whether it be a social use venue that will be available sometime this year, or when they open up another round of licensing applications for those who are not currently in the industry in the future. So, thank you again.
Thank you guys for coming out. I appreciate your time. I never take it for granted. I appreciate you just showing up and being involved. This industry is booming, and there's so many opportunities available. Don't get sidetracked by what you see. Dig deep, get the information, read, and read again. Be the person that people want to come to for the information. Don't be the person that always is looking for the information. I appreciate you. I don't take your time for granted. Follow me at Blackabis. I'm Aisha Goins.
How about a round of applause for that amazing panel, everybody? Really, really great information. I want to thank each of you for your insight and expertise. That was a phenomenal way to set us off. Really appreciate it. We're going to be back at 12:30 for Marketing in the Mainstream. I hope you'll all hang out and enjoy the rest of the afternoon with us. Thank you again. All right.
Don't need to change the key like Lex Luger. Never up the belly of a Buddha. I have luck suck in my blood, girl. Now it's running through ya. She left, I stayed afloat.